A critic once said, "Give Jon Langford 4 hours with nothing to do, and chances are good he'll create another side project."
Hello, I'm Steve Ordauer, and welcome to Rhythm of Life. Today on the show, guest host Bob Hercules welcomes the dynamic musician and visual artist, Jon Langford. Since the mid-1980s, Langford has been one of the leaders in incorporating folk and country music into punk rock. Jon's body of work illustrates that he has always treated punk rock as folk music, and combined this with his obsession with American roots music to produce some very unique and compelling compositions throughout his illustrious career.
Today, our guest is the incredibly prolific singer-songwriter and artist, Jon Langford.
Yep, prolific.
Jon, as many people know, was the co-founder of the legendary band the Mekons in 1977. And the Mekons, of course, are still playing and still recording and still releasing albums. He also co-founded the alt-country band the Waco Brothers, the country western roots band Pine Valley Cosmonauts, Skull Orchard, Three Johns, and on and on and on. Many bands. The Mekons are still playing and putting out great albums, including their newest album, Deserted, which came out in 2019. So I wanted to welcome you to the show, Jon. Thank you for coming down here today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Great to see you.
Yeah, the Mekons are still, it's amazing, but I joined the Mekons when I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
And this year we had 2 quite large tours by our standards.
Yeah.
And they were probably the most successful tours we've ever done.
In your history.
Yeah.
What
which
would
is
you,
really odd.
What would you attribute that to?
I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe people think they should come and see us now before we croak. Or, I don't know. I think the new album's really good. And it's
a very good album.
And we've ended up accidentally on 2 really good record labels. This album is released in Europe. It's called Deserted. And
Yes.
It came out in Europe on a label called Glitterbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been voted Best World Music Label 5 years in a row by Womex. And for the Mekons to be on a label like that is incredibly exciting for us.
So record labels still matter, you're saying?
I think so, in a different way.
Yeah,
I think
how so?
to be on a label that's very cool and has a very strong identity.
Uh-huh.
And in the case of Bloodshot Records here and Glitterbeat in Europe, amazing work ethics, I think it takes a lot of pressure off you. And
Yeah.
when the album came out in Europe, I think people were intrigued that we teamed up with Glitterbeat, and there was definitely a buzz about it. We were in Europe a few years ago, and it didn't feel like there was that much interest. We felt like, well, we've left it too long. We haven't been coming back enough,
Right?
Because we're lazy and we're old. But this year it was very, very exciting.
Do you feel like you have to tour to not only to make some money, but also to keep the album out there and to get it into people's minds?
I do feel like if a record label's putting the money together to release it and do a proper job on it, you need to send them a signal that you're not just going to sit at home and wait for nothing to happen.
Right.
Because that's what would happen. And yeah, I think these days a lot of the money that people make is from touring. We're on a different scale, We're not selling $35 T-shirts every night.
Right.
But I think it was a good thing for us to do. Whether we will do that again in the future with such intensity, I don't know, because it nearly kind of killed a few of us.
This song's called Tina. It's for Margaret Thatcher and all her spawn.
Well, I imagine logistically it's difficult because some of you, the Mekons, live overseas and some live here in different places. And
We are geographically challenged.
yeah. That's a good way to put it. Well, I saw you guys at the Old Town School Roots Festival.
Yeah,
this
that was one of the
past
ones
summer.
that happened
Yeah.
this time, and it was
Great show.
It looks like an accident caused by the government. Good people with good intent. They're paving the highway down. It sinks into the water where the bad side is burned. And it's not where they lead us, it's in the act of the turn.
I want to go back and just get a little bit of your background. You were born in Wales in a town called Newport.
Yeah.
What was it like?
Seaport town.
Seaport town. What was it like to grow up in Wales in those days, the late 50s, early 60s?
I don't remember the late 50s, Bob.
No, when were you born?
No, 1957, but I haven't got much of a memory of that. Newport was kind of a boom town when I was a kid. It was steel and coal, and it was a very working class, gritty town. My mother's family were from up the valleys in the coal mining area. A lot of coal mining in the family, and the steelworks were big, and miners and steelworkers were paid quite a lot of money. So Newport grew. I remember there was lots of new kind of estates built, and we lived on a place called the Gare, which was some kind of model council housing estate thing in the 1950s. In the utopian 1950s, we were, Labour governments building good quality housing for the workers.
Right.
All that changed roughly around the time that I was thinking of leaving. I was going to go. I didn't know where I was going to go. I wanted to go to art college. Obviously that's what British people do. Just leave school and go to art college.
Were you
see what happens?
Were you painting? Were you doing some artwork?
I was drawing. That's all I ever did.
Yeah.
I wasn't really musical in the sense that I didn't have. I sang in a Welsh choir, although we weren't allowed to speak Welsh as a kid. Wales was it was one of the imperialist kind of strategies where you stamp out the native language. And
really?
That was going on. I kind of lived through that as well. The 70s was a big resurgence so the Welsh civil rights movement was kind of about language.
Oh, okay.
And winning back the right to have that. So when I was at school, we weren't allowed to speak the Welsh language, but
it was literally against the law?
We actually had a Latin teacher who could speak Welsh when I was in high school, and we asked him if he'd teach us after school, and then the headmaster thought it might be a nice idea, and then he got in touch with the local authorities, and they were like, absolutely no way.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a thing. My mother, when she was at school, they put a rope around your neck like a noose, and it was called the Welsh knot because you were not to speak Welsh at school.
Wow.
And my grandmother didn't speak English till she was 9 or something like that. Yeah, weird. And then as the civil rights thing was becoming more apparent, the people were painting out road signs. There were actually bombing campaigns. The Free Welsh Army was brilliant. It was the only army that never killed anyone except a couple of its own members. But we used to burn down English people's holiday cottages and things like that. Wow. I didn't. Personally.
I didn't know anything about this.
Yeah, but Newport was different. It was definitely more of an Anglo town. Newport. There wasn't that much Welsh spoken there anyway. But people moved there from rural Wales because of the jobs in the industry, and then that all started going during the 70s and late 70s with Margaret Thatcher. Mm-hmm. You had the mines closing down. I think the year I left, the steelworks shut down to about 1/3 of its capacity.
Right. And kind of what happened here in the States in Chicago and Indiana area. So you went to University of Leeds for art school.
Yeah.
And I always said, is there something in the water there? Because you had the Mekons forming at that university, and also Gang of Four. And so it's amazing that both these great bands came out of that one.
There was a lot going on. There was two universities, basically. What was called the Leeds Polytechnic and Leeds University were right next to each other in the centre of town. They weren't campus universities. Mm-hmm. I think there was like 20,000 students living in a very compacted area. And we had, it was a band called Fad Gadget, Frank Tovey, Soft Cell, Mark Almond, Scritty Politti, Green Guardside were also there at the same time.
All from Leeds as well?
Well, they were all from different places, and they all ended up in Leeds.
But I mean, they were at...
Yeah, they were all at the university. And the Gang of Four, the first people I met the very first day were the two, Mark and Andy, who were the singers in the Mekons. I remember Andy saying to me, I said I had a drum kit. I just got interested, and I thought the only way I could ever be in a band would be a drummer because I wasn't musical in any way. He said, "Oh, all right, my mate's forming a band, and they might be looking for a drummer. Have you got your drum kit with you?" I was like, "No, I'm going to get it though. I'm going to get my drum kit sent up because the punk rock thing was just sort of starting."
Yeah.
And there was something in the air where that was what was interesting, and painting pictures and doing drawings was not interesting, and the punk rock thing was. But I remember Andy said, "Yeah, his band's going to be a cross between the Velvet Underground and Dr. Feelgood." And I was like, I know Dr. Feelgood. I'll have to find out who this Velvet Underground band are, because I didn't no idea.
Shiny, shiny, shiny boots of leather. Whiplash, girl child in the dark. Comes in bells, your servant, don't forsake him. Strike, dear mistress, and cure his heart.
I know you're a Clash fan.
I am.
Interesting detail. Joe Strummer lived in Newport.
He lived in Newport, Wales?
Prior to going down to London and forming the 101ers, then the Clash, he was he was a grave digger.
Oh, okay.
Some mates of his were at the art college, so he went down there just to hang out, because he was kind of a drifting kind of Woody Guthrie hippie type guy.
Right.
And he told me later in his life that the first time he ever heard reggae music was in Newport at a place called the Silver Sands.
No kidding.
On Commercial Road in Pill by the docks in Newport. And it was a Jamaican restaurant with, actually probably West Indian restaurant. I think they might have been from Barbados or something. And then downstairs there was a dark cellar. You'd go down there.
Was it ska music too, or just?
I think he said it was. Well, I think by then 74, 75. It was probably a bit of ska, but it was definitely the start of that kind of U-Roy where people were toasting. DJs were toasting over the records,
right?
And I think that had a really major effect on him.
Obviously,
and I'm so proud that happened in Newport, because for me, if you think of great cultural events of the 20th century, white youth picking up on black music at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, the Clash, to me, that was what was interesting about them, the way they greedily took reggae music and said, there's no difference. We're going to take that attitude of, black rebellious youth, and
they melded so many different styles together.
I mean, it was just a kind of obvious, cool thing.
Police and thieves in the street. Oh yeah. Scaring the nation with their guns and ammunition. All a peacemaker, turn war officer. Hear what I say. Police and thieves in the street. Oh yeah.
That's one of the things we could all agree on. When you go to early punk rock gigs and there was no one had a punk rock record out yet. I think the Damned's New Rose was the first record that came out, and then no one else had anything that, there was the Sex Pistols hadn't made a record, the Clash hadn't made a record. You would go and they'd play reggae music, probably a bit of Stooges or something like that,
right?
Velvet Underground.
What was the scene like? I mean, it was very political. It sounded to me like
in Leeds, particularly, I would say.
And why was that? That town was so at that time,
because there was tough politics on the street.
Yeah,
it was like white fascist sort of youth. They tried to infiltrate it. There was word that came up from London that punk rock was. You saw people like Susie Sue and Sid Vicious wearing swastikas.
Oh, okay.
It was like some kind of art school shock thing.
Yeah, right.
But
shock
we
value.
were appalled by that.
Yeah.
Because on the streets in Leeds, there were kids picking up on this sort of thing. There were actually fascist bands, and then fascist organizations coming into the clubs trying to recruit kids. And that's why Rock Against Racism started. And it was the whole focus on the thing was kind of around politics.
And you had a long relationship with Gang of Four, and from what I gather, sometimes you would play their instruments and vice versa, and it seemed like you were politically somewhat aligned as well. They were
they were more rigorous, I would say.
Yeah,
and we were a bit more lyrically and everything. They definitely developed a kind of Marxist sort of structuralist kind of program to their lyrics. Where ours were we were more interested in what was going on with bands like the Buzzcocks, where Pete Shelley was writing love songs, but they were love songs that were kind of gender free,
right? And
they were love songs about people being pathetic and spiteful and
honest.
Useless and honest,
right?
Yeah, rather than kind of the sort of macho kind of thing, the blues rock kind of like "I love you, baby."
So how did the Mekons finally became a real band.
Well, there was a manifesto. We were only going to open for the Gang of Four. We were only going to be their support band. We would never make a record. We would never have a photograph taken. We would never do this, that, and the other. And then the first gig we got, we were offered a gig by John Keenan, and he had a club called the F Club.
Okay.
And then that was because the fascists used to go down there. He changed the name to the Fan Club. It was called the F Club, but he didn't want it. He didn't want it to be called the Fascist Club. But he booked us to open for a Scottish band called the Rosillos, who were classic kind of art school.
Yeah, I kind of remember that
kind of cartoony science fiction fun punk band, and there was kind of room for lots of things in the regions of Britain. Everybody had their own interpretation of what punk rock was, and a lot of people were doing really weird things because it was outside of the London sort of based, punk. I think in London was kind of like, it was fashion based, and it was very much the next stage of the music business. People were watching it as like, what's this? Oh, right, here's where the music business will go next. And then in the provinces and Wales, Leeds, Scotland, Manchester, people were taking it more at face value as a kind of a call to arms, or just the fact that it was people who would normally not have been in bands.
Right.
People who were absolutely excluded from being in bands by the nature of kind of prog rock virtuosity.
Right.
Suddenly we're allowed to be in bands. And
was that liberating to you and your bandmates?
Yeah, that was absolutely it.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom said to me the first day we formed, or the first day that he asked me to be in it, was Tom was in my kind of year, and he was the other guys, Andy and Kevin and Mark, were a little bit older. And he just said, "Do you want to be in a band where no one can play?" And I went like, "All right."
When do I start?
I can play a bit. Yeah, it was the moment, that was the moment. It would sound crazy. It would have sounded crazy 6 months before. Okay. But at the time, we were just receiving these smoke signals saying that, punk's this thing where, we're destroying everything. It's not like you've got to play 1 million notes a minute. It's got to be kind of like political. It's got to be authentic. It's got to be kind of barbaric. And so I can do that.
Takes 32 weeks of your life to get a car. 3 days. 4 hours. Get a job. Get a car. It takes 1 week of your life to buy a mattress. 3 days. 4 hours. Get a job. Get a car. Get a bed. It takes 2 hours of your life to buy whiskey. 45 minutes. Get a job. Get a car. Get a bed. Get drunk.
And one of our things we used to say to people was always, we can, we'd finish a gig, and then we'd say, go and form a band. Do it yourself. You can, you can do this as well.
Right.
And we got quite good with minimal resources at actually putting on some kind of exciting show. But literally, it was all backwards. Rather than having a solo, someone would drop out.
Right.
So that's where the Gang of Four perfected that as well. Right. It was that was like a dub reggae thing, where rather than add something else on top at this point. Right, the bass player drops out. Those were the kind of dynamics. They were very simple, but they were very effective. Punk was about, you had to be, I think the first gig with the Rosillos I was talking about, the John Keenan actually, we told him we only played slow songs. We were going to be the first punk band that only played slow songs, and he just went, well, you better speed them up or they'll tear you apart. And it was true. We got out there, and it was like rammed full of like Leeds, punk kids, sort of smattering of art students, but mostly kind of wannabe football hooligan street kids with, their hair all sprayed up and makeup on, wearing bin bags and carrying rats in their pockets and stuff like that. It was crazy. It was brilliant. And Simon Snake was the leader, the king of the Leeds punks at the time. And we played about 3 or 4 songs really fast. And then he jumped up on stage and danced with us. And then his kind of cohorts, this girl Rats, this girl who carried a rat with her at all times, and her friend Delicious. And they got up and danced on stage, and we were like, oh, we've made it. You know, first gig. And then as Brazillo's tour manager was this really, really interesting guy, Bob Last, who came up to us and said, hey, I'm thinking of setting up a label. Would you be interested in recording one of your songs do a single? We were always like, we'll never make a record. We're not going to fall into that trap. And they were like, yes. The Gang of Four were really mad because it was like, and our bass player Roz was going like, no, don't sign us, sign the Gang of Four. They're a real band. And Bob was like, I don't want a real band. You know, I want the Mekons. So
right.
It was, I mean.
So you did that single.
Yeah, Never Been in a Riot,
right.
which was actually an answer to the Clash's White Riot.
Right.
And it was directly relating to how that song was misinterpreted up in Leeds and Yorkshire, because the Clash wrote that song, I won't say naively, but there's a White Riot.
Right.
You know, they were definitely saying we're you know, pledging our allegiance to Black West Indian youth who are fighting the police on the streets in London at this time. It's a very specific message about SPG group, you know, special, paramilitary police going down there and pitching, you know, battles with the local West Indian kids who were disenfranchised.
So you're saying that the Clash song White Riot was in a way misinterpreted when it got out to other parts of the country, like in Leeds.
Yeah.
Then it was seen as White Riot, meaning white kids rioting on behalf of white working class kids or something.
And
so you
probably going out and fighting with Pakistanis and West Indian kids.
And so you guys wrote a song, Never Been in a Riot.
Yeah.
As sort of a poke towards that
Well, it was
interpretation.
We thought it was just a brutal kind of admission of our kind of useless middle class art schoolery. We'd never been in a riot. We didn't want to be. Right. And if the police came, we usually ran off. Kind of lampooning the kind of bravado of a lot of the early punk stuff had a lot of chest beating, kind of
Although
smash the system.
It seems like it's, like you said, it's a lampoon of that kind of interpretation, and it seems to me like it's the beginning of a long history of Mekons and Jon Langford poking holes in sacred cows. It seems like you've done a pretty good job of being able to.
I don't know. I think that's kind of more useful than making giant, bold statements that you can't follow through on.
Right.
You know, I always think, I don't know, pop music's there's a responsibility that comes with songwriting that I think you have to be careful. Someone like Bruce Springsteen, who wrote Born in the USA.
Yeah.
You know, I think he was shocked that people only listen to the chorus.
Right, vastly misinterpreted song about Vietnam.
A very heavy song about a guy coming off of Vietnam. Ronald Reagan thinks it's an anthem.
I believe Reagan used to play that song at his rallies until Springsteen put a stop on it.
I know. So we've always very careful about what we wrote about and realized that from a very early stage that, you know, there's nuance in everything and possibly this is rather than like barking out some order of how people should behave, you know, in your songs, maybe you're taking part in a conversation where people might be drawn in by wondering about what you're talking about.
Right,
and you can have a more nuanced.
So you were always conscious of that?
I think immediately,
yeah. Interesting. I was wondering how you were affected by the British miners' strike in 1984, very divisive time in Britain.
Well, that was a galvanizing thing for the band.
1984, and a war of attrition engulfs the British coal industry. This was a year-long resistance by the bulk of the miners and their families.
He's a man, a big man, leave him walk out.
And it was a defining, deeply scarring moment in the history of British industrial relations.
That was really the death of kind of like the world I understood growing up. You know, where workers and unions had some power, and
Right.
the miners in Wales were a powerful force, and they weren't. You know, they were, as Richard Burton once said, they were the aristocracy of the working classes. You know, they commanded respect and
Right.
made good wages. And
Yeah. I mean, in a way, they and other unions created the middle class.
yeah.
Wouldn't have existed without
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And of course, in '84, you had Thatcher.
Well,
and
that's
we
it.
Had, we had
that was-
Reagan. And
84,
there's a
85
lot
strike
going
was
on.
it was planned. It was it was an assault on that power.
Yeah.
It was an assault on wages, and it was an assault on workers' rights. It was and it was planned. It wasn't just an accident that happened. They knew what they were doing, and they won. 84, 85. I was away with another band playing in Europe, and Tom asked me. He'd been asked to get the Mekons together to do some miners' benefits, and if, with the help of a mate of ours, Jim Chapman from the Gang of Four tour manager, he was like, was there a way we could put a live band together and do some shows? And I was like, yeah, just do it, and I'll be back when I'm back. I was away for a couple of months, I think, in Europe. When I come back, I'll just come and join in. So Tom basically got Lou Edmonds, who'd been in the Damned, and later still is in public image now, and then Steve Goulding from Graham Park on the Rumour, who was
the drummer
playing with the Gang of Four
right
at the time, and they came and joined the Mekons. We already had Dick Taylor from the Pretty Things had been hanging out with us and playing a bit, and then Susie Honeyman, the violin player, had joined. Sally was getting involved with some of the kind of crazy bedroom projects we were doing, and suddenly we had a band. I came back from this tour of Europe, and they'd done about 3 gigs, and I'm just like, I just turn up. I'm like, middle of the miners' strike, I'll just come and play harmonica or something. I didn't even know some of the songs they were doing. It was great. It was a really nice kind of, suddenly we were a proper band again.
Yeah.
And we had been working on loads of songs, and then we for about the last 3 years, and we kind of funneled all those songs then into this lineup.
Right.
And I think we made half of Fear and Whiskey in one afternoon.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that album because you started to veer out into, I don't know what you call alt country, or you certainly were influenced by the old time country western music. How did that come about?
There was lots of influences. I think punk was all about this year zero thing of being, we're destroying everything and we're inventing the wheel, and this is like nothing that's ever happened before. And then, that wears off and you realize, hang on, you're part of.
Yeah.
If you're making any sort of music, you're trying to communicate in this way through song. You're part of an ancient tradition, and we were lucky enough to meet some very interesting people. Bill Leader was kind of like the British Alan Lomax. We met him through looking for a studio in Yorkshire to go and do some demos in the Yellow Pages. Someone said, should we go to Halifax? Yeah, let's do that. Get there, and it's like the home of Bill Leader, Tractor Records, who recorded Bert Jansch's first album.
Oh, okay.
There was an archivist who'd gone out with tape recorders and recorded traditional English country dance music, which we then became obsessed with.
Because of him? Did he turn you on to?
Yeah, we just didn't. We had no idea, and suddenly we were recording in his studio, and he's like really helpful and doesn't dismiss us. And then he says, I think maybe I've got a chap who might be better. Calls his mate John Gill, who became part of the band, who'd worked with the Sex Pistols, and he'd engineered some Sex Pistols sessions, and he got him in. And then John was a fantastic guy, just an amazing sort of Renaissance person, kind of had worked studio engineering on punk rock records, but his real heart was like in traditional folk music and reggae. And then also introduced us to concepts like Cajun music. So see, like in Cajun music, it's all down to the mistakes that are being made, the limitations of the instrument and some of the clicks and clacks and the way that you can only play this instrument a certain way. That then becomes the style of the music, and that's what you're like. It's your mistakes and errors and kind of inaccuracies that make you interesting.
The mistakes.
And we're like, oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I never really thought about that.
Huh.
And then he thought we were like a folk band and part of a great tradition of protest music. And then we met people from Chicago who'd heard the Mekons and came looking for him. A friend called Terry Nelson came over from the USA and stayed with some of the Gang of Four in London and was looking for the Mekons and the Pretty Things, his two favourite bands, and managed to introduce us to Dick Taylor. We became great friends. Dick was in the original Rolling Stones.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
Really?
He was at art school with Keith. And,
wow.
Yeah, but he came along with his sort of searing electric guitar, and then we were like, starting to get interested in country music because Terry Nelson had all these tapes of Merle Haggard and George Jones and Ernest Tubb, and I got obsessed with that.
Had you heard that music before?
No, I didn't know. I didn't think I liked country music.
No.
I didn't know Johnny Cash was country music.
Really?
Country music to me was like old people on Irish TV late at night in blazers, George Hamilton IV singing sentimental songs about their dogs and stuff. Johnny Cash, I just thought he was rock and roll, like Elvis. You know? But when I heard, we were like 26, 27 years old probably, and we're suddenly listening to songs about, Merle Haggard songs and George Jones songs about drinking and lost love.
Right.
And that's what Terry said, because our biggest record was called Where Were You? And it's like, I was waiting in a bar, Where Were You? Was the second single that caused all the trouble by actually selling really well as an independent record, and found us, ended up with us being on a major label. And he said that's like a country western.
It is kind of like a country song.
It's three chords. He said it's three chords, and he said all your songs are like country songs. All three chords, really easy to play, and all about being in bars and failed sexual relationships.
When I was waiting in the bar, where were you? When I was buying you a drink, where were you? When I was trying to hum in bed, where were you? When I watched you from a distance, did you see me? You were standing in a queue, did you see me? You had yellow hair, did you see me?
It's a classic.
It's like Ernest Tubb.
Yeah.
Where Were You was like Walking the Floor Over You by Ernest Tubb.
Right.
And it was really hard for us to make that connection. But then once we'd made it, it was like, God, maybe we were a country and western punk band.
All this time.
And what would that sound like?
And then you added some instrumentation.
Yeah, the
to help
violin was
augment
really
that.
important.
Violin and
Susie just sort of turned that up. She'd played on a record by the Fire Engines called Candy Skin, which was one of my favourite sort of post-punk records, Scottish band. Absolutely brilliant. And these strings were just amazing. And someone told us about Susie, and we decided we needed a violin. Could she come and play? And she said yes, and she's still in it now.
Yeah. I mean, it really gives the sound such a haunting quality. I think
There's something about the way she plays the violin. She's Scottish.
Beautiful. Oh, okay.
And I don't know. It's like you can take the girl out of Scotland, but you can't take Scotland out of the girl. She's just like, it is haunting.
Yeah.
Everything sounds like it's cloudy and raining when Susie plays the violin.
And then Sally Timms, some of her songs are in that same tradition, I think.
She wasn't on Fear and Whiskey.
No.
For some reason. She was sort of sneering in the background going, that sounds terrible, don't release that. But she'd sung on some stuff earlier, but for some reason she wasn't around when we did that album. Then by the next album, Edge of the World, she was in the band and sang a bunch of songs. Then she was in the touring band when we came to the States in 86, 87.
And she adds a whole different quality to the band, I think.
Yeah, it's a collective. It was a group of friends. Really, that's the band we have now.
I wanted to ask you about the album, The Mekons Rock and Roll, which is such a great album. And it was really, at that point, I take it was your best-selling album. You were on, was it A&M Records?
Yeah, we were on a label called Twin Tone up in Minneapolis. And they had this kind of like farm team system.
They had the Replacements.
Yeah,
Twin Tone.
And Soul Asylum.
And Soul Asylum, right.
We were like the Jayhawks as well.
Right.
And we were kind of shunted into this kind of tunnel where we ended up on A&M. It was explained to us very nicely that it was a very good thing to do, and there'd been some problems with like alternative distribution collapsing, and we swore we'd never be on a major label again, but this seemed like it was going to be different.
Yeah.
But we went into it eyes wide open and decided to make an album about the rock and roll industry.
Right.
So initially the songs were called The Publisher, the agent, the manager,
that explicit,
the A&R man, things like that. And it was, I think we
kind
should
of a concept album.
We thought maybe it's better to veil it a little bit, but yeah, we had the main guy, typically the guy who signed us, who was actually had a vision and understood what we might.
And he was a good guy, as I understand.
Steve
right?
Rabowski, I thought he was a good guy. Yeah,
but he left the label.
Yeah, he got kind of shunted out, and he went over to Elektra Records and did an amazing series called the American Explorer series. That's kind of the model we wanted to be part of,
right?
Where major labels didn't spend that much money on things, but gave more established artists, artists who were kind of a niche thing, some money and proper distribution.
And leave you alone somewhat.
Leave you alone and not worry if it doesn't sell 1 million copies.
Right. I mean, they did sell, as I recall, like 30,000 albums, which is pretty decent sales.
Nothing for them and huge for us.
Yeah.
It was a dark and stormy night, and the ship was rocking on the open sea, tossing, turning, and rolling in our bunks. The first mate, the bosun, and me.
So there was this complete gap. We thought it was great, but yeah, the album is good. And then we made another album called The Curse of the Mekons, which I thought was probably some of the just our most creative and best thing we'd done. And then they refused to even release it. So.
Oh, they wouldn't release it.
Yeah, but they wouldn't let us leave the label. But they wouldn't release the album, so it was a very strange time. We asked to leave, and they said, "You don't ask to leave. Bands don't ask to leave. We drop you." Like, "Oh, can you drop us then?" And they were like, "No, you can't ask to be dropped. We decide that." So they were like, "Oh." But we went into the doldrums then again for a few years. It was very difficult.
Well, maybe in some ways, like you said, sort of like the revenge of the Mekons. It's like you kept coming back. You can't.
Yeah, I mean, I think those experiences probably made us more bloody-minded and more kind of determined not to be defeated.
Yeah,
even though we were defeated. Right. But it just makes you wonder what is success? What does success mean? What is a successful project? Right. Is the Mekons successful financially? Mm-hmm. No, it's not successful. Right. Artistically, that's up for anyone to say. But as a kind of community of people doing what they want to do, I would say it's highly successful. Mm-hmm. And there's a way of challenging norms of how you behave in the music business. I think it's very successful.
You're listening to an interview with musician and artist Jon Langford on Rhythm of Life. I thought the Mekons Rock and Roll was a great album, though.
It was like we suddenly had this tight, really hard little band. We toured so much in '88, the Mekons, and we developed that sound. Yeah. And then we just came up with this idea, let's write these songs that kind of about the music business, but let's go on tour in Europe first with Lou playing the bass. It was, suddenly it kind of kicked it up a notch because he's just such a great musician. Yeah. And him and Steve really liked playing together. And we played all the songs over and over again every night on a tour of Europe. Then we went in the studio.
Oh, you played them on tour first.
Yeah. And for me, I've been playing I never really played the guitar that I was playing with the Three Johns with the Mekons. And it just seemed suddenly that the Three Johns had gone, and then I was writing stuff that was combined those things a lot more. Mm-hmm. And Tom was really into that. We read Hammer of the Gods, the book about Led Zeppelin, and we're going, would it be great if Led Zeppelin actually sounded as good as the descriptions of their music in this book? Maybe we should try and make some music that sounds as exciting as these descriptions, because the way it was written about is fantastic. Yeah. And then, I do think Led Zeppelin's very exciting.
They're a great band, but I will say the song, like let's say the Mekons Rock and Roll, is about something. It's about, the music industry and political commentary as well. And
we were very aware that it was kind of a concept album. And it was to sort of again, stick some pins into that sacred cow. Right. Rock and roll.
Which needed to be done. I always felt that one of the great things about punk rock and what followed from punk rock was a realignment of the music, of what was acceptable and how everybody could get involved, and the DIY spirit and all that stuff. And it was a good, healthy response to the arena rock what I
Yeah,
call,
yeah.
or corporate rock bands or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's
you
what
wanna call
rock and roll. We felt
Yeah.
rock and roll had become just a corporate,
Yeah.
boring thing.
it. Yeah.
But maybe there was some life in the actual music.
Yes.
And so, I mean, the song rock, Memphis, Egypt. Literally, I mean, the format of it was kind of a 3 John song,
Right.
and then it was us doing it, you know, with the different sort of lyrical, very more sort of pointed lyrics.
Yes.
I don't know. I just think that was the first song we had, I think, and we were like, all right, we're onto something here. This is how the band should sound.
Yeah. It's a great song.
Yeah.
Memphis, Egypt.
I think for some people that album, looking back on it, is possibly too narrow and focused. There's a certain sound that goes right through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then when we did the curse, it opens back up again and goes
Yeah.
off in all these different directions,
Yeah.
which is more our natural
Yeah.
inclination.
I suppose it's not as eclectic as the
Yeah.
other albums, but it's
But I
it's
think with
pretty
me and
tight
Tom,
album.
we
though.
were on a major label, and I think we were both in agreement that we should make a kind of like tough statement. You know?
Yeah. Bite the hand that feeds you.
That's a Waco Brothers lyric.
How do you had this whole collective of people for all these years. I'm just wondering how you all got along, and how did you, I mean, it just seems like it's fraught with possibilities of clashes and, egos and, that kind of stuff. How did you manage to keep it all together for 40 plus years?
I don't know. People kind of, some of the time, most of the time, people understand what it's about, that it's not really about trying to accumulate money. Mm-hmm. It's about sustaining the thing creatively and
Right.
trying to make interesting things and have interesting experiences. Mm-hmm. And I think we have a lot of like-minded people who are quite happy with that idea.
Yeah.
That this can be something that's maybe enriches our lives in other ways other than financially. And it's like a family or a marriage, Mm-hmm. There's I wouldn't pretend there's never not been tensions.
Yeah.
People have left.
Yeah.
Said, I've had enough, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
And then we've always said, well, you can always come back.
Yeah. And you have had some people come back. Right?
Yeah, people
That's
come
true.
back. They didn't leave. It was just like, I can't do it at the moment.
Yeah.
I've got to go and earn some money somehow.
Yeah. Well, there's always that.
What happens when we're together is the magic thing.
Yeah.
For me, and it's almost not worth. We'll have conversations and we'll talk about, like I said, words or a book.
Right.
Tom will say, "Hey, have you read this? I should read this." Joseph Conrad, read this Joseph Conrad short story, and I'll go, "All right, yeah, that's good. All right, we'll get to that when we do the next album."
Do the songs? Are you writing songs before the recording sessions, or are they evolving during the sessions, or what's your method?
Mostly during the session. This time there was a little bit of we experimented with sort of songwriting via WhatsApp.
Oh, okay.
And which is quite interesting because you can't. Tom found out that if I sent him some lyrics, and he sang a song back, he couldn't play the guitar because you have to have one hand holding down the thing when you're recording the message.
Oh, okay.
It's like, that's brilliant. So then he'd sing me these unaccompanied. I'd get a message on Bing on my phone, and there'd be him like kind of somewhere in the West Country of England. Singing these lyrics I'd sent him, and it might have been the lyrics I'd sent him might have been from taken. I think we were talking about old folk songs, and then we taking old folk songs and just changing most of it, but keeping the kind of structure the same. All the sort of narrative was similar.
It had the essence of the old folk song,
and then singing it. There's a couple of songs on the album that come from that. It was kind of an interesting way of working, but we literally probably went in to the album with one song with words and a tune.
So you're writing as you're there. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And responding, lyrically to the environment. The last
Yeah.
album was recorded in just outside the Joshua Tree National Park in Yucca Valley, and that's an interesting place to go and spend a bit of time.
Yeah.
And not have much time. It wasn't that we went there to get our heads together in the country and loll about
Have a
for
retreat?
a bit. No, it was we were like in the middle of a tour, and we've got these days to do some recording. And look at this place; it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens. So it was kind of like the opposite of getting your head together in the country. It was like having your
Because you had to define
scraping your brain around on the rocks and prickles, and
Yeah.
there was something very exciting about the harshness and the resilience of that landscape
of the desert.
Yeah. And I think that's what we thought about, and and about being in a place that's a desert, and deserts in general. Like, there are many deserts. We live in Chicago, where we have food deserts. Yeah, and then there's some might say the politics has become a desert.
Yeah,
you know, and you have to hunker down and get your spines out and prepare for periods of no water.
Right. Well, speaking of that album, Deserted, which is your newest album, it really is informed by being in the desert. It seems like many of the songs.
Literally, we were there, and a lot of the references were to that.
It seems like, in a way, kind of a concept album, that everything in some ways relates to the desert, or the metaphor of the desert, as you said. It's a very mysterious place. A critic said that the album Deserted is inspired by remote places where civilization cannot easily thrive, but humanity and wonder can. And I love that description of that album, because it has so many themes that relate to the wonder of the world, like all the stars.
How many stars are out tonight? Yeah.
And the wonder of the universe and all the stars, but also sort of other songs relate to the time we're in now. There's a song on that album, Lawrence of California.
Yeah.
And I love that song because I take it as sort of this lunatic fringe guy who thinks he's the king of the desert. But it's a reference to T.E. Lawrence, the Lawrence of Arabia that we know.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting song to me. It strikes me as being a little bit about imperialism, and I just wondered if maybe I'm reading too much into this, if the album in a way kind of is a little bit of a commentary on the state we're in.
I think it was definitely about the current state of politics.
Yeah.
I don't know how to go into that exactly. But,
yeah.
I think line by line with that song, Lawrence of California, it's that's where we were, and that's where we made the record.
Yeah.
And it felt like, here you are, and this is a state with the tech industry, one of the most liberal states in America, but also probably the most libertarian, and a state where some people probably want to secede.
Yeah.
From the rest of the United States,
right?
Which would make sense on any other continent.
Yeah.
And then they have the highest GDP of most countries in the world,
right?
And then here we are out in this kind of national park, kind of weird area where there's no people, you can't see anyone, but here we're in the middle of California. Yeah, no, it's just there's so many contradictions, and it's so kind of awe-inspiring.
Yeah,
I love California, but I don't understand. I don't even understand it.
You had a song on that album also, Into the Sun, which I think is kind of like a classic Mekons song. It has that sound of the that you had developed over the years, that guitar, that kind of jangly, rigid guitar in the background, and then this beautiful kind of haunting lead vocal, kind of a duet in a way between you and...
It's a weird song because it started out, I got up really early one morning. I kind of liked getting up and watching the sun come up.
Yeah.
And I went in the studio and wasn't capable of recording anything, switching the material on, but I started playing the drums.
Oh, okay.
And I was trying to remember a drum beat from a song that I was playing drums on from the demos for the second album, which never got recorded. We never used it. There was a song that existed, and no one's even got a cassette of it. But I thought it'd be funny to try and play that drum beat again. Maybe we could use that. And then I recorded it on my phone.
Oh, okay.
And me playing it. And then I gave it to the engineer later and said, "Can you just put that onto the computer?" And then Steve played along with it and moaned because it speeded up and it was all out of time and everything. But I said, "No, just try playing along to it. It's got a weird." It's on my phone. We were experimenting a lot with just recording things on our phones, outside,
like a first draft. Almost.
We were singing stuff on the phones. Like we used some of Tom's vocals.
Right.
It was just off just like this is the iPhones. Like, I thought they were like toys for adults,
Right.
But actually, it's an incredibly powerful piece of technology.
Yeah, it's a nice tool.
And why not? That's what everyone's got on iPhone.
Are you saying that in the final mix that you use some of the sound you recorded from the phone?
You can hear that. You can hear that.
That's in the final song.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
I can't explain how these records get made, really, other than we set up the circumstances, and there's this crew of people who are uniquely open to try things and read by failing.
I wanted to ask you about a few of your other projects, your other bands. The Waco Brothers is a fantastic band, and how did that come about? What need did that fulfill with you, separate from the Mekons? Why did you form the Waco Brothers?
Yeah, I moved to Chicago, and the Mekons really weren't doing anything, and I was kind of about to get married to my wife, Helen, who's from Chicago, and my band was in massive legal wrangles, and there didn't seem to be any prospect of us doing anything very soon. We'd just been dumped by A&M, and one of the first jobs I got in town was Dean Schlabowski from was in a band called Wreck, who were on Wax Tracks,
right? And
he asked me if I'd produce an album. He was surprised to see me DJing at the Crash Palace, which is now Delilah's, which is a job. Cynthia Plasticaster got me my first job. She said, "Do you want a DJ? They'll give you $40. I was like, "Yes." I haven't got anything. I've just got no money. I'm not. And so
had you just moved to Chicago?
Yeah. And so I met Dean that night, and then we became friends. And I think I worked on the album. I forget where we were, but he had a guitar in his hand, and we went for a drink at the old country and western bar in Wicker Park that became the Double Door.
The Double Door, yes.
Yeah,
and
it was a Double Door then. It was Double Door Liquors.
It was a country bar at that point.
Yeah, and had a stage like a wagon, like one of those with wagon wheels and a big cover.
I remember that bar, it being in my opinion, the smokiest bar I've ever been in.
Yeah, for some reason we went in there for a drink.
Yeah.
And then the woman behind the bar said, "Are you guys a band?" We were like, "Yeah." "Do you play country music?" We were like, "Yeah." Because Dean was really into country music, and we had these conversations about how we really liked, Merle Haggard, and he's so you want to come back later? You can play. We'll give you $150 if you want to play. We're like, wow, we haven't played a note, and we've got $150. So we went down the Rainbow. For another drink.
The Rainbow
afterwards.
Club.
Yeah, down on Damon and Division. And Dee, who owns the Rainbow, said, "Oh, you don't have to play there. You can play here."
Yeah.
And we were kind of like scared to play at the proper country bar.
Right.
Even though I got up on stage with the Sundowners at the R&R Ranch. And the Sundowners Ranch out on Mannheim Road.
The Sundowners were the Chicago country western band.
Yeah, I paid my dues with those guys a few times. Yeah. But it just seemed like safer to do something at the Rainbow. And then she said she'd give us $300. So we were like, okay, we're going to do this.
That's pretty good. So was it just the two of you?
It was just the two of us. Then Tracy Deer, who's in the band, his girlfriend had given him a mandolin.
Oh, okay.
which he didn't know how to play. So he got up and did a few songs. But then he was like the kind of driving force, and he knew lots of people who ran bars.
Right.
So we decided we'd have this band that was not anything to do with the normal gig circuit, and we would just do country and western covers
Right.
in bars, because I'd never done anything vaguely like that in my life. But of course, these affairs turned into, we just got paid in beer, and
Right.
they turned into riotous events, and people, other people kind of got interested and offered to play. So Steve Goulding was living in town at the time,
Oh,
and he says,
okay.
"I'll play with you.
Right.
Do some country covers, that's a laugh."
Right.
Yeah, I'll get my mate Tom Ray, who was the bass player in the Bottle Rockets,
Oh, okay.
came, and then suddenly we changed the name of the band every night because it was always literally like just there would be some singing and stuff, but mostly it was kind of like more like drunken stand-up comedy and a lot of shouting. And
When
then
did it
we'd play Jimmy and Ty's and Wrigleyville Tap.
When did it become the Waco Brothers?
That was the gig. We got
That
a
was
gig.
it?
And I was out of town, and Dean thought Waco Brothers was suitably tasteless. So soon after the event, we were the Waco Brothers, and we packed out in the Wrigleyville Tap, and Steve and Tom Ray playing actually proper music. We actually sounded like a real band, and then people like Sue Miller hey, what? I hear you got this band.
Yeah.
Why don't you come and play the Lounge Act? So that's not the point. We don't play. We only play bars that don't have music on normally. And
Right.
she was like, well, so you won't play my club? I'll give you, and we're like, all right, we'll come and play there. So then it turned into a proper band, but it was meant to be.
Right.
And then Bloodshot found out about us and asked us to do a track for one of their early compilation records, and then wanted us to do a single. And we were like, well, I don't want to be in a country cover band on a record. That seems ridiculous.
Right.
So we just started writing songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dean's great songwriter.
Yeah. A good singer too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And-
it was kind of easy, and that again, opposite of the Mekons, it was just you write a bunch of songs, I'll write a bunch of songs, and we'll just go. Now when we make an album, I don't even really hear what he's written. We'll go into the studio, and I'll say, "You got one? Okay," and we'll learn it on the spot and record it. The last,
So these are different from the Mekons. You're writing songs in advance
yeah,
before the recording session. Okay.
yeah. I'll have some, but we don't even. I think we trust each other enough to.
Yeah.
We don't pick over what each other do. It says, you bring something, I'll bring something, and we'll bash it out.
And is that different from the Mekons? Is it in a way liberating to be able to play with the Waco Brothers, kind of a different band, different kind of?
For me, the Waco Brothers was always about, you didn't need to read the book to understand the band.
Yeah.
The Mekons we were kind of struggling with a lot of baggage, and there'd been lots of turns and directions, and the sound wasn't necessarily consistent right the way across it. It wasn't that about as the ideas were consistent, and the sound could be almost anything.
You're saying
the
because the Mekons are essentially an art project, really.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it evolves all the time, whereas the Waco Brothers are.
I wanted a band that wasn't in any way an art project, and the Three Johns were kind of arty.
Yeah.
But had a very consistent sound. It was very kind of stripped down and very recognizable. You'd always know when you heard the Three Johns. And so the Wacos, I wanted something that was like that, something you could take anywhere on a Friday night, and no one would, be confused.
Just one album I love, Going Down in History.
Yeah.
That's the lead song, the title song, and that is fantastic. And it's such
Well, you quoted from it earlier, Bob.
Yeah.
Bite the hand that feeds you.
Right, that's right. That's right. Yes.
It's all gone. We used up everything. Gotta find something to put in its place. Gotta walk before you can fall down on your face. Gonna bite the hand that feeds you. 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 We're going down, going down, going down, going down. We're going down, going down. You're going down in history.
There's a very tight band.
Yeah.
When you listen to the Waco Brothers, and I've been to some of your shows.
It's a stretch, time time is so elastic. Better find something to put in its place.
But I always say it's like somewhere you go and see on a Friday night, and you have a good time.
Yeah.
And then maybe if you want to listen to how depressing and annoying the lyrics are, you can do that later in your own time.
Well, and some of the Waco songs are also political.
I would say they're all political, really.
You're going down in history. Gonna haul the bastards over. 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 We're going down. Going down. We're going down. Going down. Going down. Well, you're going down in history. You're going down in history.
And Building Our Own Prison.
Yeah.
Great song. And can be, like art, I think it can be interpreted different ways.
It was kind of about gated communities.
Yeah.
We're all going to live in one big gated community.
Right.
Keep everyone we don't like and every idea we don't like out.
Tick-tock, clackety-clack, round and around in the front and the back. Big boxes ring the town, dead pubs falling down. Change is constant, metamorphosis, some might even call it progress.
It's kind of about the internet as well.
Mm-hmm. And could be read today as what's happening down in the border with all the refugees trying to get across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Build a big wall around us.
Right. And the Waco Brothers are obviously still kicking. And how do you balance all this together? You've got also the Pine Valley Cosmonauts and other bands.
I would say the Pine Valley Cosmonauts haven't done much for a long time.
No, okay.
But, that was a good project because that was kind of like exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, that the sort of country music that I was interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
didn't really
mostly
know.
a covers band, right?
Yeah, we just played. We basically went in and found weird songs. It was like honky tonk archaeology, I think that's what somebody called it. And it was that. And then Bob Wills,
Yeah.
I love Bob Wills, but it seemed like nobody was really interested in Bob Wills. So I was like, let's try and. I don't know how to play Bob Wills. I have no idea how you play that. I found a few people who had a clue. Got Goulding in, and it was like he was willing to have a go at it, and Tom Ray again, who was at the Waco Brothers at the time, and we just let's try and play Bob Wills music and see what happens.
I mean, that's country swing. That's not easy to play.
No, it's. I think we do. Well, we actually, Bob Wills' daughter Rosetta heard the album. And she really, really liked it. And she said it was kind of fresh and different. Yeah. I think somebody said it sounded like the Bonzo Dog Doodah band trying to play.
I remember that.
Trying to play Bob Wills, but that's fair enough. I don't really think you can overestimate what a genius, what a kind of avant-gardist and revolutionary thinker Bob Wills was. His concept of music is absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely what I like about it. It's border music. It's like there's a bit of this, take a bit of that, smack it all together.
Yeah, he was combining, I suppose, similar to how the Mekons were mashing together
his
different
mashup.
music.
He created the mashup of everything great about American music.
Yeah.
And then with this kind of like manic energy.
Yeah.
And also this kind of dignity as well. I love the way they look.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures. They're not like rubes from the Grand Ole Opry, blacking their teeth out and wearing dungarees.
Right.
This is for real. This is what
professional band.
This is what we look like, and this is what we are. And the respect he had for you know, black music, Mexican music. It's just, it's really what a great human being.
Just that most people have never heard of him in this day and age.
And I met Jimmy Dale Gilmore first time I worked with him. I met him and I said, I'm doing a Bob Wills album. Would you sing on it? And he'd go, oh, yeah. I said, he started talking about Bob Wills, and he just said, you know, Bob Wills, I don't know, as a kid I just thought, Bob Wills, he's a magician. You know, and I was like, that's what he is.
It's funny that a guy from Wales would end up resurrecting, in a way, some of that great Texas swing music.
I don't know what that's all about.
That's crazy.
I just think it's, you know, that was the purpose of that. It's like you find out what, you know, there's this music, I don't really understand it. I just got obsessed with it, and I wanted to play it, and I don't think any music's out of bounds.
Yeah.
You know, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, that seems to be a defining trait of yours. There's no music out of bounds. Oh, let's talk. A couple minutes left, but you are also an artist. You're a painter, and you've done these incredible paintings of all these blues and country western stars, from Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, all the way to obscure country stars that most of us have not heard of. How did you start that project, or what inspired you to do that?
Well, there was a period where I was really into country and western music, and that was probably from the mid-'80s, when we were making Fear and Whiskey. Although we weren't trying to sound like that, I was totally kind of embedded in it, you know. That was pretty much all I was listening to. All my friends were taking ecstasy and going to acid house discos. I'm sitting at home listening to Hank Thompson, and funny. Drinking bourbon and wearing a cowboy hat. And everybody thought the Mekons were kind of insane, but we actually really, really, really immersed ourselves in that, and we were obsessed with it very much. So when we came to the States, it was very painful to come and see that the Grand Ole Opry had kind of moved to the suburbs.
Into that giant auditorium and out of their original.
Yeah, and I mean, the Sundowners in Chicago, it's strange, about 86 or 87, I think it was. Somebody took us to the Sundowners Ranch, and it was kind of the last place we expected to find what we were looking for.
Like,
and they
real
were these
country.
really guys really doing it, and they'd been there for 30 years. And they were the tail end of that whole WLS barn dance with Chicago.
Oh, the show they had, the barn dance show.
Yeah, and that was Chicago was a place where people came because of it was a country and western town.
That's right.
I mean, there's a lot of Appalachian people moved up here, but you know, Nashville, you know, that's country. Chicago, that's blues. You know, and the story's always much more complicated.
I think the barn dance show was on the air earlier than the Grand Ole Opry.
It was, and it was it was a variety show with all sorts of kind of ethnic stereotypes and craziness. But you know, Gene Autry started on that show. Yeah, we made an album of Johnny Cash songs in 1987, which was a kind of Mekons spin-off, but with Mark Riley from The Fall. It was his initial idea to do it, and he wanted me and him to sing Johnny Cash songs. I was like, that might be a bit of a stretch. So let's get a bunch of other people in, and then we decided we'd make it a charity album, so people wouldn't criticize us for being completely self-indulgent. And it was the age thing was a big deal at the time. Right, and that's when people like Reagan and Thatcher were denying it existed. Right, preachers were saying it was a gay plague and it was God's revenge and all this. So
it was a terrible time.
And we really wanted to, you know, I mean, we had a lot of friends who died from AIDS, you know, so we wanted to do something at that time that would raise money. There's a thing called the Terence Higgins Trust. So we actually got in touch with Cash because we didn't really want to do it with him and then him, you know, not be into it. Right. So we went to a gig of his at the Manchester Apollo, met him backstage, and we meet Johnny Cash. He's totally into it. Turns out the surgeon who'd operated on him and Waylon Jennings had died of AIDS, I think. Oh, okay. And he was...
so he was sensitive and...
Very, to that Johnny Cash was everything you'd expect and more. Yeah. Totally cool about it, and loved the fact that it was sort of British punk rockers covering his songs, and made a point of going on the BBC and talking about the album, and so these young people said in an interview, these young people understand my music more than my fans do. Wow. My fans come to see the Johnny Cash show,
Right.
These kids,
The icon of
these
Johnny
kids,
Cash.
these kids understand my songs.
Yeah.
He said that, and it was lovely. And his daughter Roseanne said in an interview as well that it was a big morale builder for him at the time that we'd done this album. We didn't think, how would Johnny Cash was like Moses or something to me. I didn't think anything I could do he would even notice. And then,
you didn't think he would even get a chance to listen to it.
No, he did listen to it. It was great.
That's great.
It's fantastic. In fact, we had a guy called Mary, who was real name was Ian, who was the singer in the Gay Bikers on Acid, which is a band I was producing at the time. And we had him sing Boy Named Sue. Because he's Mary.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Pretty funny. Cash really loved it. He did a great job. He's a really fantastic singer, and he did a really great job of it. It was a really crazy, bonkers version.
Yeah.
And Cash said, on the BBC, Cash said, I love these young people covering my songs. And he's like, Peter Shelley from the Buzzcocks and Mary from the Gay Bikers on Acid. And it's like, there's Johnny Cash saying Gay Bikers on Acid on the radio. I made Johnny Cash say Gay Bikers on Acid on the BBC. Brilliant.
That's a pretty good Johnny Cash, too, that you just did.
He had a little tremor in his voice. But he was so kind of humble as well. It made me... So it was so sweet when we met him.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like totally the Chris Farley figure, you're Johnny Cash, you're great.
You didn't know what
to say to him. I had no idea what you say to Johnny Cash other than just bow down and go like, you're just brilliant, because he was everything. And he, like I said, I didn't understand that he was country and western.
Yeah.
Or anything to do with that. To me, he was the guy who sang in prisons and, had Boy Named Sue and he had a bunch of hits in England.
Dylan.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but he was like everything great. Again, like Bob Wills, everything great about America. Everything's inclusive. Everything's like, you're all welcome. With Johnny Cash, we were welcome. He made me feel welcome.
He was embracing you.
Yeah. And lovely, just, I never saw him after I moved to the States, but the last time I met him, I took my mother to see him at a gig in Newport. He actually played the Newport Centre.
In Wales?
Yeah, before the Rick Rubin thing, and the average age of the audience was going to be 65.
Yeah.
And none of my friends even wanted to go. I had an extra ticket. So I said to her, do you want to come and see Johnny Cash? And she said, oh, yeah.
Right.
We go backstage, hang out with Johnny Cash. She ends up chatting with him for about 20 minutes. He plants a kiss on her lips as he goes on stage.
That's very
with
sweet.
June Carter standing right there.
Wow.
And my mother was just, ecstatic.
Wow. What an incredible evening.
Yeah, and then he put on a really great show. But it was like, it was the family show, and he, at the time, felt incredibly irrelevant.
Yeah.
And I think he said, I don't get played on the radio.
Right.
Merle Haggard doesn't get played on the radio. George Jones doesn't get played on the radio.
Yeah.
And I'm just, at that time, I was thinking about this move to the States.
Right.
And I'm like, well, God, Johnny Cash is over.
Then what are you going to do?
And this is all a very long explanation of why I started painting those pictures. Because I thought I was like the Pine Valley Cosmonauts, the honky-tonk archaeology. It was the same thing. I thought, I'm going to paint these are my kind of heroes. These are these are my zodiac signs or Greek icons. These are the people I'm going to make paintings of these. And it was quite a kind of obsessive thing of looking at the old publicity photographs. And we went to Nashville on that trip when we came to promote the album when it came out. And I went to Tootsie's Orchid Lounge and saw all these great old publicity photographs on the walls and felt a kind of real weird connection to like these young country singers in that moment, when you're having your publicity photograph taken and you're smiling optimistically out in the future. And then you've been on this wall for 45 years and now you're covered in nicotine snot and, but it glows like gold. It was the most amazing thing. I thought, I'm going to make paintings that look like this.
Okay.
How hard would that be? Like, look, I'll paint because I was always a good draftsman. Yeah. And I never really had a good excuse when I was at art college. You can draw good. Oh, so what? Yeah. That's nothing to do with it. Have you got? I thought, I've got this skill, and I couldn't really use it when I was at art school. No one cared about it. But then suddenly I was like, I found my own way. Now I'm going to make little wooden paintings of country and western singers, but not even of the singers. I thought of them as being paintings of the publicity photograph.
Are you painting those on wood?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then it came from that, and it's sort of I did the cover for the Johnny Cash record. That was the first one. Mark made me do it. You're an artist, you can do it.
Yeah.
Just do a painting of him. I was like, I don't know how to do that, and then I started, and then I couldn't stop.
It's almost like going back to your original roots when you went to art school. And then all these many years later, you were starting to, and you're still obviously still.
When I came to Chicago, I had to. That's when I started.
Yeah,
that's when I started doing it, and it was like we were in real problems with the band. I didn't have any means of making a living. And Tony Fitzpatrick, fantastic artist in town, who I'd actually met again on that trip with Mark Riley. I met him in Graceland.
Oh, really?
Tony was being thrown out of Graceland for jumping on the bed or something crazy. And, I met him and he's going, Mekons, what are you doing at Graceland? Mekons, man. And I'm like, who are you? He said, when you're ever in Chicago, you got to look me up. So when I moved here, obviously we bumped into each other.
Yeah.
And he just said, you draw. I heard you do drawings. What do you do? You got to come to my studio and make some art. I'll give you an art show. Never seen anything I'd done.
Wow.
And that's when I had the kind of large cogwheel went round in my brain, and it's like, I was actually trained as an artist. Maybe
that's right.
If the Mekons, I can't make any money as a musician, maybe I can. And I never ever thought in wildest dreams that you could make art, exhibit it, and sell it. But it's kind of worked, Bob.
That's great.
Last few years. It's been
they're beautiful paintings.
Well,
and they're so evocative. I think one thing I see in them is they're so evocative of the time and the period, and there's something about the texture of that. And now it makes sense they're painted on wood.
Yeah,
and
they're
so
very fragile. The surface is very unstable.
Yeah,
there's a lot of oil pastels and things like that in there.
Yeah,
and but the distressing.
Yeah,
I wanted to make it look like not like aging or like faux kind of like distressing, but actually vandalism. So they're actually really scratched up.
Okay.
And, like the pictures on the wall of Tootsie's, like people's
45 years
like people's dreams being kind of like hacked away. That was the idea for me. So
weren't you commissioned by the Country Music Hall of Fame?
Country Music Hall of Fame, and even like Hank Williams. There was an album of Hank Williams, kind of like solo acoustic stuff came out, and they asked me to do the cover.
Really?
And I'm like,
nice.
wow, this is really odd. A painting of mine called "The Death of Country Music," which basically calls Nashville music industry a bunch of murderers for destroying all the things I liked about country music.
For homogenizing.
Ended up on the wall of the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all your stories with us. And
that's great. Thanks,
this
Bob.
Interview. It was really, really great to talk to you, and can't wait to see what new things come out of your mind as we enter the next year.
Oh, well, hopefully something.
Something.
You can never tell.
That's right. Jon Langford, thank you for coming on the show.
Cheers.
And we'll put up some of your paintings on the website as well.
Oh, right. Great. Yeah. That'll be really good.
Before he left our studio, Jon performed a brand new song that he had just written, a fitting song for the divisive times we're in.
This one, I'm not sure what this one's called. Might be called Losers. Might be called Stupid Coward President. Could have many titles. Soldiers coming home from another holy war. Did you fight to win, or are you losers? Walk back into a game show where the fortunate will spin and beggars won't be choosers. I'll walk a mile in your shoes, and this is what I'll say. I have your shoes, now I'm a mile away, and the gap's been getting wider every hour since Reagan came to power. Miners in a coal field who don't go underground, workers in the Rust Belt Your factory's shut down. You've been replaced by robots and slave labor, and I'm not coming to save you. Well, I'll walk a mile in your shoes, but your shoes do not fit. My shoes are better, and the heels go click, click, click. They march in time and follow orders, dragging children to the border. Yeah, I'd walk a mile in your shoes, but you know I'd rather ride, so my little hands can wander anywhere that they decide. From sea to shining sea, I will abuse you. I'm growing like a tumor. Now scientists and teachers, you're not needed anymore. Legal and illegal, hear that knocking on your door. The mission is to frighten and confuse you, distract and call you losers. You're all losers, 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 losers. Now we're all losers.
Join us next time when we hear from the legendary Reverend Jesse Jackson, discussing the Emmy Award-winning gospel TV show Jubilee Showcase and its outspoken producer and host Sid Ordauer, who worked with him and Dr. King in the Civil Rights Movement. This upcoming episode is part of an ongoing series from a documentary in production about this incredible show that was a who's who of gospel icons from 1963 to 1984. As reported in Rolling Stone magazine, for Ordauer, Jubilee Showcase was simply one of several interests and passions folded into a larger life of activism. And the reconsideration of Jubilee Showcase comes at an opportune time when gospel music is regularly showing up as a key influence in the pop mainstream. And now, for the first time ever, a 36-song compilation from Jubilee Showcase is available to the public on streaming services such as Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Just search for Jubilee Showcase. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe, leave us a rating and review so more people can hear about us, and share about Rhythm of Life on social media and like us on Facebook. Thanks for listening. I'm Steve Ordauer.
This has been a Rhythm and Light production.